It is 7 o'clock. Good to have you with us this morning. A shock resignation from the Prime Minister's ethics advisor has once again put Boris Johnson's conduct back in the spotlight. Lord Geidt had previously admitted frustration over Partygate and refused to deny to MPs that he had considered resigning over the PM's response for being fined for breaching lockdown. He is the second person to quit the role in less than 3 years. So where exactly does that leave the government just a week before the public get a chance to give their verdict in two key by-elections? Plenty to get into with the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, in just a few minutes' time. It is Thursday, 16th of June. The Prime Minister's ethics advisor resigns after conceding that Boris Johnson may have broken the ministerial code. Lord Geidt, the second person to quit the Downing Street role in less than 3 years. Police in Brazil say a man has confessed to killing the British journalist Dom Phillips and his guide Bruno Pereira and has shown them to where the bodies are buried. 3 specialist courts are being set up in England as part of a pilot scheme designed to improve rape convictions. The Bank of England is expected to hike interest rates for a 5th time in a row, pushing up payments for millions of households across the country. Taking the night train to Kyiv, the leaders of Germany, France and Italy heading to Ukraine's capital in a show of support. Nothing but a PR stunt. The captain of a £38 million super yacht, sanctioned by the UK government, says they've got the wrong guy. Also ahead this morning, tackling the big issues of life and death. I'm going to be joined by the winner of the Women's Prize for Fiction, Ruth Ozeki, to discuss her novel, The Book of Form and Emptiness. And have you ever noticed your older phones not performing quite as well? I'll be speaking to a tech expert about the £750 million claim launched against Apple for allegedly slowing down its older devices. Morning all. Boris Johnson's ethics advisor has resigned after raising concerns that the Prime Minister may well have broken the ministerial code over Partygate. Lord Geidt has not given the reasons behind his decision to stand down, but earlier this week he had refused to deny to MPs that he'd consider quitting over the PM's response to being fined for breaking COVID rules. The government says the resignation comes as a surprise, but as our deputy political editor Sam Coates reports, it's not the first time over recent years that this position's been left vacant.
A second ethics advisor walks out on Boris Johnson after what he himself labelled an exceptionally busy year.
Did the Prime Minister break the ministerial code?
I think the Prime Minister's views are clear in the letter that he sent to me on the 31st, but do have a look at that. OK, thank you very much.
In a one-sentence resignation statement, Lord Geidt gave no reason for quitting. In an appearance before MPs on Tuesday, there were a few hints. On accusations that he was too close to number 10...
How can I defeat the impression that you're suggesting of a sort of cosy, insufficiently independent relationship? I think it's very hard.
And on whether he'd ever considered resigning, this response.
There are a few instruments available to an independent advisor, and important to consider what is going to work best. Again, I haven't given you a direct answer.
In 14 months in the job, clashes resulted in multiple threats to resign. It seems Tuesday's committee appearance was the final straw.
The ethics advisor who resigned had been the principal private secretary to the Queen. The challenge for Boris Johnson now is whether he can find another ethics advisor of anything like the same standing, and what impact will this whole row have on Tory MPs' confidence in him.
Critics quick to point to the bigger pattern.
I think he wanted to achieve change. He wanted to improve the ethical standards in Downing Street, and he thought he'd be able to do that. But he was repeatedly lied to by the Prime Minister personally and by the Prime Minister's team. Lots of good people go to work at Downing Street, and then they get consumed in the bonfire of Boris Johnson's narcissism, and and their reputations are the ones that are tarnished and ruined.
Number 10 insists Lord Geit's resignation is a total surprise, having indicated earlier this week he was happy to continue in the job for months to come. Now his departure, yet another headache for a Prime Minister trying to perform a relaunch. Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
A little surprise then, a very busy show ahead. In just a few minutes' time, I'm going to be speaking to the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab. Lots to discuss following the shock resignation of the PM's ethics advisor. As Ukraine pleads for more weapons to help it fight off Russian advances, I'm going to be joined by the former commander of the Joint Forces Command, General Richard Barrett. And just after 8 o'clock, I'll be joined by Labour's Shadow International Trade Secretary, Nick Thomas-Simmons, as they announce a plan to make Britain more attractive to new businesses. Now, police in Brazil searching for the missing British journalist Dom Phillips and his colleague Bruno Pereira say that a suspect has confessed to their killings and led them to where the two were buried. Their bodies have yet to be formally identified, but will be sent for a forensic analysis. Sky's Sadia Chowdhury reports.
One of the two suspects in the disappearance of a British journalist. Hooded and masked, police say he confessed to killing Dom Phillips and his guide Bruno Pereira, and that he led them to a site where human remains were being dug up.
From now on, we move on to a new stage, the phase of identifying these human remains, which are being collected with the greatest dignity, in order to preserve the chain of custody and evidence, which is very important.
The missing pair had been on a 4-day reporting trip in a remote part of the Amazon for a book Mr. Phillips was writing. They were last seen 11 days ago.
I think the idea of the book was actually to show the world what all sides of the Amazon conflict or the Amazon reality consisted on. He wanted to give this human vision, but unfortunately that happened and the story is never going to be told.
Two brothers, Anarildo and Ozane da Costa, who are local fishermen, have been arrested in what police say is a murder investigation. Anarildo is the main suspect in the case, and police say he told them he used a firearm to fatally shoot his victims. His brother Ozane denies any wrongdoing and had previously claimed Anarildo confessed under torture. For days, local indigenous people have led the search, at one point uncovering items belonging to the pair. Their friends and family had called on authorities to do more to uncover what happened. Police are yet to confirm the identity of the remains they found, and until then, this community's wait for answers continues. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News.
3 dedicated rape courts are being set up as part of a pilot scheme designed to improve convictions for serious sexual offences. Sky's Laura Bundock is here with the detail. Morning, Laura. Look, clearly this is an announcement of significance and you'll give us the details, but as alluded to, part of the reason that this is significant are those historically low rates of conviction.
Yeah, it's pretty dismal if you look at it. So what's happening is we've got this trial, this pilot. It'll involve Leeds, Newcastle and Snaresbrook Crown Court, all chosen because they have above average numbers of rape and sexual offence cases passing through them. And they will all have a dedicated courtroom specifically for these cases. Now, that'll be equipped with this special video technology, which means that victims can give a pre-recorded evidence statement rather than having to go through the trauma of a live trial, rather than having to come face to face with their attacker. And this is seen as a significant reason why so few of these cases end up in court. The government says it'll use the findings in this trial to help increase the speed and the volume of cases passing through the criminal justice system. But as we know, as we've been seeing and hearing about the figures, they are dismally low at the moment. Just one figure from the government this year shows that the average weight a victim who has a rape case has to weigh is 706 days from the date the rape is reported to police to the date.
More than best part 2 years.
A huge, and that's the average. So there'll be some courts where it's a lot longer than this. And that's why, obviously, campaigners for victims say many have simply lost faith in the system and why change simply can't come soon enough.
Laura, for now, thanks very much indeed. We've got a few other stories from the day now, starting with the Bank of England. It is, of course, expected to announce a fifth consecutive hike in interest rates when it convenes later today in an effort to combat rising inflation. Most experts are predicting a small rise after data this week showed a further contraction in the economy. Yesterday, the US Federal Reserve announced its biggest rate rise in nearly 3 decades. The government will today unveil measures to prevent landlords in England banning pets and unreasonably raising rents as part of a review of the private rental sector. The measures also include a ban on no-fault evictions, which allow landlords to remove tenants without having to give a reason. And it will be illegal to reject tenants because they have families or are on benefits. Commuters have been advised not to travel by train unless necessary next week, after rail bosses confirmed that strikes will close half of Britain's railway lines. Unions say the action is necessary, with up to more than 2,000 frontline jobs at risk. Grocery analysts predict that food prices will head up quickly this summer. The Institute of Grocery Distribution says that prices will increase by 15%, forcing households to pay more for staples such as bread, milk, fruit and vegetables. Apple is facing a legal claim worth over £750 million for allegedly causing batteries on older iPhone models to slow down. The consumer champion Jonathan Gutman is seeking damages for over 25 million British customers, claiming that Apple encouraged customers to download a software update that reduced the performance of older handsets. Now, NATO defence ministers are meeting in Brussels this morning as Ukraine again issues an urgent plea for more weapons to help it fight off Russian advances. It comes as a Kremlin spokesman has warned that relations with the United States are at a very hot point of confrontation. Let's bring in our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, who's in Brussels for us this morning. Good to see you, Deborah, and good to see you outside of Ukraine. What are we going to be seeing happen today? What is it that the Ukrainians want, and indeed, what is it that the defence ministers can provide?
Well, as you said, Ukraine has been speaking repeatedly in increasingly urgent tones, for the need for more heavy weapons. And yesterday, ministers meeting here at NATO headquarters met with Ukraine's defence minister. There was what's called the Ukraine Contact Group, which is a new grouping of countries. There's actually around 50 countries now contributing to this group, giving weapons, ammunition, and making other pledges to help Ukraine. But clearly Ukraine doesn't believe it's going far enough. But the US, the UK and others were stressing very strongly that they are doing all they can, pushing every single lever they have available to ensure that they give Ukraine what it needs. But there's clearly a gap there. And today, defence ministers from the NATO alliance are meeting again. And on the agenda is all about NATO itself and improving further the defences of this alliance from what they see as an increasingly aggressive and dangerous Russia, and also dealing with other challenges such as the one posed by China. And this work is taking place ahead of a key summit at the end of this month where leaders of the NATO alliance will be meeting in Madrid. And the expectation, the hope, is that that will be the moment that NATO really sets out exactly how it's changing its posture, its defence, its deterrence posture in the face of what has been a fundamental reshaping of European security. And of course, right at the top of that as well is how best to help Ukraine to do more to defend, to enable Ukraine to defend itself. And then finally, there is that question about the expansion of NATO. You'll remember that Finland and Sweden, two countries historically neutral, have decided that they want to join NATO in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. NATO members welcoming this, apart from one, Turkey. There's questions over whether or not Turkey will back down on its concerns about allowing those two nations to join NATO. The UK is going to be playing a key role in that, with the UK's Defence Secretary revealing that he plans to travel to Turkey to try to help resolve Turkey's concerns about this expansion. It's related to their concerns about Kurdish terrorism, in fact. And the UK Defence Secretary believing that it will be resolved by Madrid. Others are not so optimistic.
Fascinating meeting ahead. Deborah, for now, thank you very much indeed. Now, Sky News has been told that the owner of a Russian-owned £38 million yacht that was seized by the government is not on the sanctions list. At the time, ministers did not reveal the name of the super yacht's owner, but described its ownership as deliberately well hidden. Sky's Ivor Bennett reports.
It's become a symbol of the crackdown on Russian money. The first super yacht to be detained in UK waters, the Fee has now sat in London's Canary Wharf for more than 2 months.
Ivor, good afternoon. Welcome to Fee.
But the ship's captain says it's being held unfairly, the victim of a government PR stunt.
At the time we were detained, we were the only boat here. It was easy pickings. Easy pickings done for social media. It's headline grabbing, clickbait, attention seeking. What you see here is actually the floor of the pool. One press of a button and that goes down.
As well as the disappearing pool, it has a cinema and so-called infinity wine cellar, 400 bottles deep. £40 million worth of luxury the captain insists has been bought with clean money.
We've got some rotating pieces of furniture.
We're told the owner is a Russian businessman who made his wealth in civil engineering.
None of that information links the owner of the boat to any position in Russian politics, to Mr. Putin or any other political aspiration.
And you believe that?
I do. I've known him for 11 years.
The detention order names the owner as Sergei Naumenko. He's not on any sanctions list, but legally speaking, that doesn't matter. A connection to Russia is enough for the yacht to be held. But the government claims there's more to it. Posing for photos back in March, the Transport Secretary said the yacht belonged to a Putin crony who's hiding behind a complex paper trail. The boat's registered to a company in St Kitts and Nevis and carries the Maltese flag.
It's a perfectly normal structure, and within that structure, Mr. Naumenko is referred to as the ultimate beneficial owner, so that is all perfectly open, so there's no nefarious background to this. It is, in my world, bog standard practice.
At 58 metres long, this is actually considered small by super yacht standards. Some are over 100 metres in length. But when it comes to applying sanctions against Russia, the government clearly sees this as a prize catch. The Department for Transport said, "We stand firmly by our decision to detain assets such as the Fee, which satisfy both the scope and purpose of sanctions. The Secretary of State will continue to act within his available powers to ratchet up the economic pressure on Russia." As the yacht's detained and not seized, the owner is liable for the £10,000 a month mooring fees, a drop in the ocean for him perhaps, but one he doesn't think he should pay. Ivor Bennett, Sky News.
As you can see, joining us now on the sofa, the Justice Secretary, the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab. Lovely to see you this morning.
Good morning.
And we do have a significant announcement on break that we will get to, and I promise you we'll spend some time on that. But I do need to start with the resignation of Lord Geidt. Hand on heart, do you believe that this government always, 100% of the time, operates ethically?
Yes, I do. I think we're doing our best for the country. I think you've seen that through the pandemic with the vaccine rollout. I think you've seen it with getting the economy back up and running. I think you've seen the moral leadership the Prime Minister has shown on Ukraine. Do we make mistakes? Look, it happens. We're human, we're fallible. But actually, in relation to Partygate, which is what you're alluding to, Prime Minister held up his hand, he's apologised, he's overhauled Number 10. I do think also people expect us to get on with that crucial job, particularly with the cost of living challenge affecting so many people.
I completely agree. People definitely want you to get on with the job, but I do need to ask, why has a second ethics advisor resigned from this government? What are Lord Geidt's stated reasons for doing this?
Well, the stated reasons, of course, he set out overnight, but were very limited. So he just said he thought it was the right time to step down. Look, let me tell you what I know. First of all, he'd been engaged with the Prime Minister in Number 10 this week and discussing staying on for 6 months. So I think my understanding had been he was committed to the role. I think he had a pretty rough grilling by MPs this week. I think sometimes we in the media as politicians maybe underestimate how civil servants feel with that kind of scrutiny. And thirdly, there was a particular issue, commercially sensitive matter in the national interest, which he was asked to look at. I don't know which aspect of this. I suspect there will be, in fact, I know there will be an update from Number 10 later.
Which will be great, but that will be their response to his letter. Why have we not seen Lord Guyot's resignation letter? That's pretty unprecedented for such circumstances such as this.
Well, he's given a statement, and I can't tell you, I'm not a psychologist.
It's not a statement, it's a sentence. He has written in full to the Prime Minister, as people do generally when they're hired by this government and they choose to resign. They set out their reasons, at least for departure. He has done so to the Prime Minister.
Well, I don't know whether there's a full letter or whether a full letter and reply will come out. There'll be an update from Number 10 later today. Genuinely, Niall, as I always try and do I'm telling you what I know.
When will he be replaced? Because, with respect, it does rather feel that getting another ethics advisor might be a priority for this government.
No, look, I think the role's important. We'll do it as soon as possible. I think Number 10 have made that clear.
And you don't perhaps detect any problems in hiring a third ethics advisor in as many years? I mean, you hired a new cost of living czar the other day, David Buttress, who said that Boris has got to go, he just has to, you can't survive judgment like this. When you're at the point of having to hire people who have explicitly stated that Boris Johnson should resign, all is not well in government.
Well, I'm going to put it the other way. I think the fact that he is, notwithstanding previous tweets he may have made, willing to serve under this government, under the leadership of the Prime Minister, is a positive.
I think it says a number of things. I'm not quite sure that people will agree with you that it's a positive. I think it says something about Mr Buttress. But it's not just, of course, Lord Guyot that resigned this week. Last week, you had the anti-corruption czar resign, John Penrose.
Well, look, John's an MP. I think he was clear on his criticisms of the Prime Minister. I've worked with him on things like the Magnitsky sanctions. I'm afraid I just disagree. I mean, look, we know that there are Conservative MPs who have been critical of the Prime Minister, but he had 59% support, and we're getting on with the job, as I mentioned.
OK, you mentioned 2 in 5 of your parliamentary colleagues, in a best-case scenario, basically all of the backbenchies, feel that the Prime Minister does not have the ability to lead either the party or the country. The anti-corruption czar goes last week, making his complaints very public. We have Lord Guyot 2 days ago saying that it would be reasonable to say that the Prime Minister had broken the ministerial code, and then he resigns the following day. You take all of that together, and it is your position that this does not reflect badly on the Prime Minister.
Look, I think we've had a difficult patch, but we're getting on with the job. You haven't really asked me any questions with respect, and you're always forensic.
OK, here we go. Does any of that reflect on the Prime Minister's integrity?
Look, no, I asked all these questions Monday last, when we had the vote of confidence. 59% of MPs backed the PM. We're getting on with their job. The challenge of the cost of living. We've still got an acute issue in relation to Ukraine. That can't just slip off the radar. And I'm talking about rape courts and the crucial job we're doing fighting crime and giving women greater confidence in the justice system.
OK, here's the really simple question. To lose not 1 but 2 ethics advisors and an anti-corruption czar, your position is that does not reflect negatively on the Prime Minister's integrity. I mean, that's nonsense.
Well, in relation to Lord Guyot, it's not clear to me at all that what the reason is. And so, I mean, I think you've been asking me about that. There are clearly these issues around the other commercially sensitive matter which he was engaged on or asked to advise on. My understanding was that, again, to the best of my knowledge, as of earlier this week, he was planning or he was hoping to stay on for another 6 months. He's obviously had that grilling in front of MPs. So I think the risk is you're adding 1 + 1 and getting 3, but I understand why you're asking the question. There'll be a further update from Number 10 later today.
Would you, if you were in Number 10 right now, not republish the statement, the letter that he wrote to the Prime Minister? You may have to redact if there are issues of national security or whatever else. You can redact the letter. But the fact that you haven't put in the public domain the resignation letter of the second ethics advisor to depart government looks awful.
Well, look, I only know what he said. I didn't know, and I don't know whether he's written a letter or not. What I do know is Number 10 will provide an update later on today. So you're not going to have to wait too long. I appreciate all the gaps. What I always like to do when I come on here is tell you to the best of my knowledge what I know.
And I always appreciate it. Let's dwell a little bit closer to your brief on the issue of Rwanda. The front of the Daily Mail this morning seems to suggest that you would be willing, or the government is considering at some point in the future, ignoring decisions, judgments handed down by the European Court of Human Rights. It was barely 24 hours ago that your colleague Therese Coffey was sitting there telling me that this was a law-abiding government. I mean, that's nonsense, if this is true.
No, you're, again, a slight caricature of what is a complex legal position. So first of all, we'll be introducing and publishing our Bill of Rights shortly. One of the issues that's arisen is whether Strasbourg has a power of injunction. Now, this issue on whether these deportation flights should be stayed pending a further trial of all the further hearing of all the issues in a few weeks' time was considered by the High Court. Mr. Justice Swift, read the judgment, it's very interesting. He clearly said no, there's no need for an injunction. It was then considered by the Court of Appeal. They backed him wholeheartedly. Supreme Court said no need for there was no leave to appeal to the Supreme Court. I think when three courts, and I have got great respect for the judiciary in this country, have considered and dismissed the issue. It is not right for Strasbourg to intervene in the way it did.
You're the lawyer. Where does it go? Where does the European Court of Human Rights sit? High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court. Where is the ECHR?
So first of all, actually the European Convention, if you look at it, has no power of injunction. And indeed, the Strasbourg Court...
We have followed judgments of the ECHR since
No, it's a very...
80%. You're
not going to get the answers your viewers need unless you just allow me to briefly explain it. I'll take any question you like on this issue. The Strasbourg Court itself has said for many years that there's no binding power of injunction. And then later on they said, well, actually, we can issue such binding judgments. It is not grounded in the Convention. What I would say to you is we should abide by the Convention, but so should the Strasbourg Court. And on this specific issue of whether Strasbourg can injunct the UK, our Bill of Rights will correct that, and I think it's the right thing to do, precisely because we should be following the Convention, but also, so should the Strasbourg Court.
Are you considering stepping back from the European Convention on Human Rights, changing it? Yesterday, Therese Coffey appeared to suggest no. At lunchtime, the PM spokesman appeared to suggest yes.
Well, look, if you're asking me forever and a day, I think we need to see No, our plan... and I've already consulted on it so everyone can see, is a Bill of Rights that reflects and remains within the European Convention but overhauls the framework of the Human Rights Act and makes sure that we can fully avail ourselves of what's called the margin of appreciation, which is what the Strasbourg Court says national jurisdictions are allowed to do, in particular in cases like this.
OK, let's talk just briefly. One final point in all of this. I mean, the Prime Minister has accused your former colleagues in the legal profession as abetting the work of criminal gangs. I just want to show you one tweet. Keelan Gallagher is a QC. She has basically... she's had to be confronted. She'd had to have a conversation with the police because of threats that have been made to her life. If we can get it into the wall, today I met a police officer about death threats I've got for being a human rights lawyer. Today I read the PM's words criticising lawyers representing asylum seekers. These things are not unrelated. This government is undermining the rule of law and putting us all at risk. At the very least, will you push back on this idea that anyone who represents an asylum seeker about to be deported to Rwanda is some form of lefty lawyer, whatever that is?
Well, look, so first of all, let me choose my words very carefully as the Justice Secretary. I think that I've already been very complimentary, I think, about the role of our judges. I don't comment on individual cases, but as I mentioned, High Court, Court of Appeal and Supreme Court on these issues, I believe we should respect their rulings.
Is Keelan wrong to draw a line between the Prime Minister's words and the death and the threats to her life that she has seen?
Look, any threat to any lawyer or anyone else, and politicians get this a lot, and I know journalists do, absolutely unacceptable. But the point that the PM made is this, and look, I know the lawyers worked heroically through COVID, and with the backlog, we need them, and they're crucial to getting the backlogs down.
Could you tell your colleagues that, then?
Hold on. I also think...
I'm sorry, no, come on.
I also think it's fair to say that we've got, with the Human Rights Act, elastic interpretations of human rights, an industry that has grown up, which of course will want to take advantage of those in their interest of their clients. And I think it's right to say we want to reform some of that. But I also would say we've got a world-leading legal profession. It's one of the great exports we have around the world, and I'm very proud of them, and there are no threats against them that can ever be justified.
They will be very pleased to hear you say that. Let's now go to your announcement. And as I said, it is a significant announcement, but at the same time, we should also point out, for the time being at least, a pilot.
Well, yes, and actually we ought to pilot things to see the evidence.
Of course.
Let me make 2 points. First of all, the backlogs because of the pandemic, the plight of cases, particularly for rape victims, I think is...
It's gotten worse. It was bad beforehand. Come on.
Let me answer the question. Actually, in the last year, convictions in rape cases have gone up by 2/3. I want to go further, faster, and really grip this issue, and there's a whole range of things we're doing. What I'm announcing today is 3 specialist courtrooms kitted out to deal with rape and serious sexual violence. We've chosen Strasbourg in London, Leeds and Newcastle, because they've got a high volume of rape cases and significant backlogs. We're kitting them out with the video technology, the trauma-trained court staff, and the independent sexual advisors for 2 reasons. First of all, morally, we must put our arms around those most vulnerable, traumatised victims. It's the right thing to do. Second of all, that will drive up further the volume of convictions, which I want to at least double over the course of this Parliament.
And just on that point, to conclude, I do have to let you go, but the reason that this is a significant announcement is because for a number of years now, this country has been performing incredibly poorly when it comes to securing rape convictions. 2015-16, we had 4,643. 1,557 up to 2020-2021. Some have accused this government of failing women. You may well be putting it right, but you have to concede that for a number of years now, this government has been getting it wrong.
Well, of course, the police are independent, the CPS are independent, the judiciary are independent, but have the numbers been too low? Absolutely. We should be absolutely crystal clear. We're doing a whole range of things. The police and the prosecutors under Operation Soteria, which I look at with Kit Malthouse, the police minister, is getting a better collaborative approach between them. We're overhauling the disclosure rules. We've got more pre-recorded victim evidence, so the victims of rape don't have to give their evidence in front of the glare of the courtroom. We've got these specialist courtrooms fitted out. And can I just say, again, the volume of convictions in rape cases is up by 2/3.
From a low level, from very...
OK, but even from 2019, they're up by close to 1/3. And the length of time between charge and completion of cases is down by 38 days on last year. Is there a major challenge? Absolutely. Have the levels of convictions been too low? Absolutely. Are we making progress? Undoubtedly.
Next time we speak, we will dwell on the pilot a little bit more. Dominic Raab, thank you for being with us.
Good to talk to you.
Quick look at the morning's front pages, and we begin with the Metro. The only way is ethics. I see what they did there. That's how the Metro describes the announcement that Lord Geidt quit. The Eye also making the resignation its front page lead, suggesting that Lord Geidt quit in protest. Here's the Telegraph. It says that Lord Geidt is concerned that the Prime Minister breached the ministerial code over parties at Downing Street. The Guardian says the latest resignation piles more pressure on a beleaguered Boris Johnson. You may well be picking up a theme here. The Times taking a similar line about growing pressure on the PM. Our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue, is back once again. Good to see you this morning, Ali. What did you make of it?
Well, I think, clearly something has gone wrong in the last 24 hours. Lord Geidt, the second man that directly advises the Prime Minister on ethics, to go in 2.5 years. Alex Allen before him when Priti Patel was accused of bullying. And remember, just last week we had John Penrose, who's a sort of anti-corruption czar in government, resigning as well. So clearly this is not good. I think one of the big questions today is the kind of details of this. Why did he go? Because we got such a short statement from Lord Geidt, and we understand behind the scenes there was a strongly worded letter.
It was more a tweet than a statement, wasn't it?
Exactly. It was literally just saying, I'm resigning. And I thought the answer there from Dominic Raab on that was fascinating. He said that he, early in the week, wanted to stay on for another 6 months. He suggested that perhaps the grilling by MPs he got the day before, remember, it was before a committee, but a lot of that was about, the kind of the limits of his role as ethical advisor, because ultimately the Prime Minister could kind of override what he says. And we know that there'd been unease. He'd written a letter where he said, there were questions about whether the Prime Minister, legitimate questions about whether the Prime Minister broke the ministerial code. But he also, I'm going to read this out because it's a bit odd. He said that he was asked to look at a commercially sensitive matter in the national interest. I'm going to try after this to work out what exactly that means. But I don't think right now we are any clearer as to why the Prime Minister's second ethics advisor has gone, and he's now searching for a third within 2.5 years.
Or indeed why his resignation letter hasn't been published. Ali, for now, thank you. Quick reminder as to our top stories, and as we've just been discussing, Boris Johnson's advisor, Lord Geidt, has resigned. He is the second person in that role to leave the post during the PM's time in office. Police in Brazil searching for missing journalist Dom Phillips and his colleague Bruno Pereira say the suspect has confessed and led them to 2 bodies. The Bank of England is expected to raise interest rates for a 5th time in a row in a bid to bring inflation under control. Now, the Home Secretary has vowed to press ahead with plans to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda after a last-minute court ruling halted the first flight. I'm joined now by the Chief Executive of the Refugee Council, Enver Solomon. Enver, good to see you this morning. Let us start with the delays, and we must call them delays for the time being at least, to those flights leaving for Rwanda. What was your reaction when you heard that that flight had been halted?
Well, not surprisingly, I was very pleased that we had this last-minute injunction and the flight was stopped. I think there's no need for us to be sending people and treating them really as though they're human cargo, shipping them thousands of miles across the world to East Africa, when we should be giving them a fair hearing on UK soil. There's many people that have come to this country, and indeed people that are watching this programme will have relatives, extended family members, some that might have fled Nazi Germany, others that have fled places like the former Yugoslavia, wars that have taken place over the last decades, who have come to the UK taking dangerous routes because they've had no choice, and we've always given them a fair hearing on UK soil. We absolutely must continue to do that today.
So when Enver, as indeed happened with me this week, speaking to the Work and Pension Secretary, Therese Coffey, the government maintains that there are safe routes to the United Kingdom, there are safe routes to seek asylum here. You would disagree with that?
Absolutely, and that's a really important point, because the reality is that if you're in Afghanistan today and you're fleeing for your life from the Taliban, there isn't really a safe route, because we're only taking a few thousand more from Afghanistan this year, and it's a very limited category of people. You can't just walk into the British Embassy in Afghanistan and say, I need a visa to get to the UK because my life's in danger. So you have no other choice but to take a dangerous journey. And not surprisingly, if you look at those that have come across the Channel in the first 3 months of this year, the main nationality was Afghans. And that tells us that there aren't the safe routes for people to get here. There's one thing that Priti Patel could do at a stroke of a pen, which is she could allow all Afghans that are in the UK to bring any family member here who's in fear for their life. But she's refusing to do that. She's refusing to provide the kind of safe routes for Afghans that are needed.
All of which means the government is set on something of a collision course with organisations like yours and lawyers representing those who are due to be deported in the courts once again. And of course, the biggest of those will be the one testing the legality. It's difficult to predict how these things will go, but pretty clearly we could be locked in protracted legal battles for some time before a plane takes off.
Indeed, it looks like that. And I think it's interesting that government sources are briefing out to some of the national newspapers this morning saying that it looks as though it could be many months, up to a year, before any plane takes off. And I think this just tells the story of how this policy is fundamentally ill thought out. It's unworkable, it's unprincipled, and it's, most importantly, it's not going to deal with the problem that it's trying to tackle. It's not going to act as a deterrent. It's not going to stop people seeking safety in the UK. We need to rethink, and we need to adopt a more sensible, principled approach. We need to have a fair, orderly asylum system. And critically, we need to work with our European neighbours to come up with solutions to share responsibility. France takes twice more asylum applications, Germany 3 times more. This is a challenge facing the whole of Europe, the movement of people fleeing war and persecution, and it requires a multilateral response in the same way that in tackling climate change, we get round the table with other nations. We need to do the same today in relation to people fleeing war to come to Europe and the UK.
Enver, not for the first time, I will admit to being somewhat confused this morning as to what exactly the government is up to, specifically on the European Convention on Human Rights. Speaking to Therese Coffey yesterday, the strongest indication that at least she disagreed with backing away from the ECHR, if not that the government was not looking at it. Today, Dominic Raab, again, slightly more ambiguous. I won't ask you to comment on what the government's policy is, but whether or not you think that in the 21st century, the United Kingdom should be taking steps away from that document that, you know, we know precisely why it was created and when it was created.
Well, I think the government's position is clearly confusing, and I think there's clearly contradictions here, because we have a government that is the first to condemn human rights abuses in Ukraine, and we've seen the pictures of the terrible atrocities there. We've seen the faces of people fleeing war and persecution, and that reminds us of the importance of providing protection for safety for refugees when they come to our country, regardless of how they get here. Yet at the same time, we have a government that is saying and questioning the human rights of people who are refugees, and there seems to be a deep contradiction here. And my concern is that as a country, as soon as we start questioning people's human rights and their rights under international treaties to be treated in a way that respects their humanity, to treat them with compassion, as soon as we start questioning that, I fear we risk going to a very bleak place and we damage our reputation as a country. There's a very simple parallel here. If you or I were stopped by the police tomorrow, if we were accused of a crime, if we were taken down a police station, arrested, we would want our rights respected. We would expect that in the same way that if someone has fled war and persecution, comes to the UK, they haven't committed a crime, they simply want to be given a fair hearing. And it's absolutely right that we treat them with fairness, humanity, dignity and compassion.
Enver, good to have you on the programme this morning. Enver Solomon there from the Refugee Council. Now, let's turn our attention to archaeology. And archaeologists working on the HS2 project say they've uncovered more than 140 Anglo Saxon burials at a construction site in Buckinghamshire. The finds include jewellery, swords, shields and spears, as Sky's Dan Whitehead reports.
So this particular individual was found with a sharp iron object embedded into the lumbar spine.
It was a gruesome end to this young man's life. Now, 1,500 years later, his remains are among hundreds of items discovered at a major Anglo-Saxon burial site.
Unfortunately, we can't let our imaginations run wild. We have to try and keep as open mind as possible. What we can tell is that this blade was left in the individual when they died, so it's very possible that it was a cause of death. Also, we have the blade mark within, this is the second lumbar vertebrae, which is the bottom of the spine.
The skeleton was discovered under a stretch of the HS2 railway construction site in Wendover. Other finds include brooches, buckles, glass and spears.
There have been hundreds of thousands of artefacts uncovered so far. The eventual ambition is that they will find their way into local museums along the HS2 route.
While HS2 causes some controversy above ground, below it is proving a treasure trove of Britain's history.
So HS2 is a fantastic archaeological opportunity to excavate areas of the country that wouldn't necessarily otherwise be developed. It's a series of digs put together along the route, and it's across a variety of different landscapes as well. So we're starting to get a good picture of those landscapes all the way from, you know, deepest prehistory through the Roman period, through to the Saxon period and through into the medieval period as well.
This is one of the largest Anglo-Saxon burial sites ever found in Britain, a discovery that experts say is of national significance. Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
Now, let me tell you about a frankly extraordinary rescue. You can just about make him out there. That is 10-year-old Rahul Sahu, who was trapped in a well in a village in central India for 4 days. Poor little lad. He is now, thankfully, been found alive. He is both deaf and mute and fell into the hole on Friday. Rescuers say they found him with only a snake for company. He's now recovering in hospital after more than 500 people spent several hours bringing him to safety. Well done to them too. Meanwhile, a haul of fake and potentially dangerous Wonka chocolate bars worth £22,000 have been seized from a shop on London's Oxford Street. There they are there. Westminster City Council said the chocolate was among counterfeit products worth a total of 100 grand taken away by officers who raided 3 unnamed stores, all part of an investigation into 30 American-style sweet and souvenir shops for alleged business rates evasion amounting to, get this, £7.9 million. Now, as Ukraine pleads for more weapons to help it fight off Russian advances, I'm going to be joined after the break by the former commander of the Joint Forces Command, General Richard Barnes. Welcome back. Ukraine has said it urgently needs more weapons to help it fight Russian advances. The appeal, aimed at the West, comes as the leaders of Germany, France and Italy are visiting Kyiv. These are the latest pictures of the leaders arriving in the Ukrainian capital. And, of course, at the same time, a meeting of NATO defence ministers taking place in Brussels. We're joined now on the programme by the former commander of the Joint Forces Command, General Richard Barnes. General Barnes, very good morning to you. An awful lot for us to discuss, and as always, not enough time. So I wonder if we can start with what is going on currently on the ground in Ukraine. Once again, we see the Russians apparently using such indiscriminate tactics in and around Severodonetsk. Around 80% of the area is now controlled by Moscow. What is your assessment of where exactly we are in terms of this conflict and who indeed is in the ascendancy right now?
So in that battle in the Donbass, the Russian side holds the initiative. It's grinding its way forward through the brutal application of firepower and the lives of young soldiers. And the Ukrainian military have provided really stiff resistance, but they don't yet have the capacity to stop that Russian advance. So this advance will end either when Russia decides it's gone far enough, or one way or another, it's run out of steam. And that point is not yet. It is very likely that the whole of the Luhansk area will fall to Russia first, and then we'll see. And then the war won't be over because they're still fighting in the south around Kherson, which is just as important because on that battle may hang the future of really vital places like Odessa.
So on the basis of that, and indeed on the basis of what we've been seeing in and around the country, we understand that Volodymyr Zelensky is again asking the West, as he has done constantly, consistently, of course, for more assistance, more arms, more materiel. What is he looking for? What can we possibly provide that at least might ameliorate the damage that is happening in the east of the country, if not actually turn the tide?
So I think President Zelensky's ask is going to have 2 parts. The first part is he needs now, quickly, enough long-range precision artillery to counter the Russian advantage in firepower, because that's the way that they can make the Russian advance stop on their own terms. They're getting some of this assistance. It's not there yet. It's not there yet in enough quantity, and of course it needs the ammunition and training to go with it. But that's how Ukraine makes the Russian invasion stop. And the second part of the ask is then he's going to need more stuff for longer to rebuild his military in order to be able to build the offensive capability to throw Russia out of Ukraine.
Estimates vary, but we perhaps could see as many as 12,000 people still within the city of Severodonetsk. Understandably, then, another humanitarian corridor is being attempted. I wonder what are the chances that on this occasion that humanitarian corridor will work effectively, unlike the number of stop-starts that we saw around Mariupol?
It's very unlikely to work until and unless Russia sees advantage in doing that. And so were Russia to decide it has gone as far as it wants to or can in the Donbass, it might try and make a virtue of letting people out of cities like this so that they no longer are a threat to them and they no longer have to look after them. So that would be quite a callous way in which these humanitarian corridors might be open. But where we are right now, they're just part of the battle.
Can we talk then, General, just briefly about this NATO meeting that is taking place today and what might come of it? Clearly, as we talk about accession of a couple of countries into the NATO organisation, clearly NATO is restructuring, readjusting itself. When that process is finished, when the pieces in the kaleidoscope have settled, what do you expect NATO to look like? How will this strategic reprioritisation take place?
I think we're going to see two very major changes in NATO. In the short to medium term, NATO is revitalising itself, remobilising the alliance, because it's seen what Russia is really like under President Putin and what it's capable of doing. So it's going to reset the conventional defence and deterrence of Europe with the new members as they line up. And then just over the horizon, and NATO will talk about this at its summit in Madrid later this month, NATO will work out what part it wants to play in this conversation we're going to have in our world about how the world with an ascendant China really works.
How concerned should we be, and as brutal as you like here, General, this is not my area of expertise, but how concerned should we be when Kremlin spokesmen are talking about relations with the United States being at a very hot point, that confrontation is approaching a likelihood?
So I think we want to be cautious, but also realistic. I mean, Russia is going to continue to talk up the prospects, the dangers of escalation in order to try and get the West, led by the US, to dial down the support that it's giving to Ukraine and the way that NATO now remobilizes. But we should recognize that in our own interest, we need Ukraine to win, and we have an obligation and own pure self-interest to support them to do that. And then we need to be able to protect ourselves. So we're going to have to live with this very difficult relationship for at least, I think, a generation.
How secure, then, do you think Vladimir Putin's position is within the Kremlin?
I think President Putin's position in Russia is secure, because we need to remember this isn't a war just between President Putin and Ukraine. This is a war where a very large number of the Russian population, perhaps 80 million, genuinely support it. And it's a combination of the information that they receive and also their view of Russian history and Russia's place in the world. This is not just a war with a small clique in the Kremlin.
And General, just a final thought from you, if we can kind of go macro just for a second. What has been your assessment of the Ukrainians, the way in which that they have prosecuted this war, their response, in fact, I should say, to an invasion? How impressed have you been by them, and where perhaps have you found them lacking?
So I think everyone has to be impressed by the iron will and the spirit of national resistance we've seen from Ukraine. We should recognise they knew this day would come. They knew that the Russians would invade again after 2014. And we should also recognise that we, the West, we simply failed to give them the military means they needed to deter and defeat that invasion. And now we're all playing catch up. But we may have made an emergency out of this, but our obligation to help Ukraine secure its future is no less.
General Richard Barnes, thank you so much for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Time for a quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
The hot weather will continue in the south into the weekend, with temperatures peaking on Friday at around 34 degrees Celsius, 33 in Old Money. The Atlantic rain belts that have been plaguing the northwest through the week will spread southward on Saturday, introducing colder air and temperatures, well, rather more commensurate with the time of year. It is a beautiful start to the day for much of the country. The northwest, the exception, I'm afraid. Some more cloud and a few showers. It will become very warm in the strong sunshine across England and Wales. The East Midlands, Cambridgeshire and the South East likely to see the highest temperatures.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Just got time to show you some of the great snaps from around the world, capturing the first of this year's 4 summer supermoons, the so-called strawberry moon, the name given to the last moon of spring before the summer solstice, was photographed in the backdrop of some iconic landmarks this year. Well, that's Dresden in the east of Germany. Let's just show you one more, shall we? And here it is in Istanbul. More from that a little bit later. Stay right where you are. After the break, I'll be getting Labour's Nick Thomas-Symonds' response to that which we heard from Dominic Raab.